depends upon the personality of that individual, that depends upon the stress tolerance level of that individual, that also depends upon the extent to which distress can be accommodated within the individual. There is also a factor that is called a diathesis factor, that is a genetic vulnerability, where the individual's personality factors, when come in contact with external stressors, it becomes extremely overwhelming to the individual. So which particular coping style a person is likely to implement, that depends upon the personality of that individual, and also to some extent the level of stress tolerance or distress tolerance. Alright? Now there are few ineffective coping strategies that individuals imply. One thing you need to understand, that in stress there is a non-specific uneasy response that body elicits. Now this uneasiness can be sorted out through a problem-solving strategy. It can be sorted out through a healthy emotion-focused strategy. It can also be sorted out through certain unhealthy emotion-focused strategies. So under ineffective coping strategies, we will discuss about two types of categories, two types of coping strategies which are usually ineffective or maladaptive. Number one, that is unhealthy emotion-focused coping styles, and the second one is defense-focused coping style. Now, defense-oriented coping style we will do while we will do psychodynamic theory, alright, because it is directly connected to Freudian theory, the psychoanalytic theory. Now we are going to discuss the unhealthy emotion-focused coping styles. I'm sure that we all have gone through certain episodes of intense turbulence, intense upheaval within ourselves, and we look up to certain strategies to minimize this level of distress. Now, often unknowingly, we hooked onto certain coping styles which takes huge toll. Those strategies take huge toll not only upon our personality but upon our health as well. It can be our social health, it can be our mental health, it can be our physical health as well. We will be discussing about those unhealthy emotion-focused coping style. One very significant unhealthy emotion-focused coping style is substance abuse. Under substance abuse, there can be drugs which are psychoactive drugs which can really pose fatal impact on our physiological functioning of our body. It can be alcoholism as well, and there are a lot of solvent addiction which has almost taken a front seat nowadays. Say for example, hookah, or it can be sniffing dendrite, or kerosene or petrol, or eating chalks. So these are some of the categories of solvent addiction. So whichever addictive means that we imply, that is bound to have significant impact not only upon our physiological health but also upon our mental health and social health. Alright? So the first ineffective coping style that individuals usually implement is abuse of psychoactive substances, which includes drugs, alcohol, and certain psychoactive solvents. Alright? The second ineffective coping style is engaging in erratic interpersonal relationships. You will find, or probably you have noticed, people who cannot commit to one specific relationship. They switch over drastically from one relationship to other relationship without giving any thought that what message are they sending to themselves or to others. It is because of a state of upheaval within oneself that compels the individual to seek reassurance from a number of people. That is, if I seek reassurance from one person, that is not sufficient. It should be, or it must be, a number of people from whom I need reassurance that I am loved, I am accepted, and I am capable of many things. So this reassurance seeking behavior through multiple erratic relationships, and another need is need for dependence. When we become very helpless within ourselves, we basically become extremely vulnerable within our dependence, within our needs of fulfilling our dependence. So we fall onto others to seek certain dependence needs. So we make frantic phone calls, right? Irresistible urge to make frantic phone calls and having a kind of an intimacy which you can say as something which is flirtatious or unnecessary, or something which is ineffective for a healthy personal bonding. So this erratic interpersonal switching is another very significant ineffective coping style. But make sure that it is a coping style. We can't afford to be in a state of judgment whether it is good or bad. But the person's vulnerability compels her. It is mostly seen in girls. In the epidemiological studies, it's mostly seen in girls that through a series of relationships, they want to seek reassurance that they can be trusted, they are loved, they can fulfill their need for dependence. So this need for dependence becomes one of the very significant need when we are helpless within. We need to hold on to some pillar to seek reassurance. But the point is that it is not one person who is sufficient to give them this reassurance. They need to seek reassurance from a number of people. Alright? And there is an apparent superficial closeness. It's not that the person is very close to that person, to another person, yet that person would actually have a very strong need for seeking dependence. Alright, is this clear to you? So this erratic interpersonal relationship is another very, very significant, ineffective or unhealthy emotion-focused coping style. The third one is, of course, cyber addiction or cyber over-involvement. Now, we actually would like to be in a world of virtual reality. Why? Have you given any thought to this question, that why do we feel so much addicted to involve ourselves in games which develop certain social connectivity in virtual reality through PUBG games, or engaging oneself in Facebook or in WhatsApp for prolonged periods of time, which are unnecessary. Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter, there can be a few more as well. Now, this virtual reality can give us one assurance. What is that one assurance? You would not be, or there is less likelihood of getting rejected as it is probable or possible in reality. Number one. So this is one reason people actually feels the void within oneself, that if I remain virtually connected with others, there is less probability of rejection, and I can showcase certain ideal characteristics of myself which are actually not real. So this ideal, making self elevated into a level of a fantasized ideal which is not true, and displaying it and exhibiting it through social media, it fulfills lot of our narcissistic needs. Narcissism is self-love. So we need reassurance whether we are loved or not. So this virtual reality has relatively less capability to reject us brutally than reality. Right? Another very important ineffective coping strategy is deliberate self-harm. That is, we often engage, we means not me or my family members or my friends or my students. I'm talking about people as a whole who have a very less distress tolerance skills. They often engage themselves in certain behaviors which are called DSH, deliberate self-harm. Often one would notice that after an immediate breakup, there are certain marks on the hand which are mutilating marks, which are marks of self-mutilation, or maybe the name of that person has been written with a razor in order to relish that pain. So when a person feels bottled up, angry from within, and cannot express that anger by giving lot of pain to one's own self, a person actually gratifies pleasure. So this is actually a tendency that we call masochism. Alright? So this tendency to attain pleasure out of inflicting pain to oneself, it can be kind of self-mutilation, putting the cigarette or beady ends on the skin and burning the skin, alright, piercing a needle inside the skin, or maybe different other forms of snapping a rubber band, wristband repeatedly to experience pain, and different kinds of other self-harming behavior that can also go to the extent of suicidal attempts as well. So these are different forms of deliberate self-harm. So we don't like to harm ourselves, but when there is a fixation of life energy in aggression, there is a tendency to attain pleasure through pain. Alright? There is another maladaptive coping strategy that is called delinquency, that is engaging in groups which can fulfill certain demands or goals which is almost impossible to fulfill through other primary or secondary groups. So if I have certain needs, say something which is little dissocial, and if my family upholds a very strong value system, of course that is not possible for the family members to afford or to reinforce that. So definitely me as a person would frantically search for a specific group where I can involve myself, where I can engage myself and can showcase my rebellious demands in a much more socially acceptable way. So this is one very specific way by which we get involved in delinquent groups, and they actually start performing or conducting certain activities which are dissocial at the very outset, and later on it turns into certain antisocial behavior. Alright? So these are the significant ineffective coping styles which I wanted to discuss. That is erratic interpersonal relationship, substance abuse, cyber addiction, and deliberate self-harm, and delinquency. Another, I would rather say, a very important unhealthy emotion-focused coping style is hasty spending and overeating. So these two are not a part of the ISS syllabus, but we can't afford to keep ourselves only within the books, right? We need to know maybe 2 points more than the usual. Hasty spending. There are a lot of people who are compulsive shoppers, alright? They go with their credit cards in the shopping mall, and probably they have no bar that where I need to stop. Probably they were supposed to shop certain groceries which would not cost more than 600 rupees, but there are several items which get incorporated and the bill amounts to 1600 rupees. So this kind of hasty spending or compulsive spending is also one of the very significant ineffective coping style. And another is overeating. Alright, overeating, that means becoming extremely fond of food that gives us certain amount of fulfillment within. That means through food, actually I'm not trying to fulfill my physiological hunger, but food acts as a very significant, emotionally significant stimulus. What food emotionally signifies, that we will study in Freudian theory. Alright, so these are the significant unhealthy emotion focused coping styles that I have discussed. Now the 6 defense focused coping strategies we will discuss only after studying Freudian psychoanalytic theory. Alright, now through this topic it apparently marks the end of this chapter. Alright, now it is your duty to scan through all the videos starting from the first till this one and put across questions and queries and doubts in the group. Tomorrow again I will come back with a video shoot if possible, and that will be for a duration of 15 to 16 minutes, and I'm going to answer all the queries and doubts. So I want my phone to get flooded with queries and doubts which can be addressed tomorrow in the evening. Alright? Stop.